Hey y'all, it's Duana here, and I'm back with another sew along, but this time with View A, my pattern ME2014 of Know Me patterns. I love this pattern. I love the back. Have y'all seen the back of this, y'all? There's a little cutout in the back. I'm not gonna move it because I don't want to make anything fall over, but you know, it has a beautiful back. I love it. I'm gonna put a picture of the back up here. This is such a cute pattern. I look cute in it. The major things that this pattern requires is a 9-inch separating zipper for the top, a 20-inch separating zipper at the bottom. You actually might be able to get away with a 7 or 8-inch separating zipper for the top, just FYI. And I've only really used denim for this pattern, but this time I used cotton sateen and I loved it. I'm so excited. I'm going to be rocking this. I actually rocked it already and I wore a denim jacket with it and it looks so cute. So I highly recommend. This is the cutest thing this summer, let me tell you. So here we go. Here's the sew along for View A of my pattern ME2014 of Know Me patterns. Okay, let's take a look at View A of my pattern ME2014. When choosing the right size, I like to look at the finished garment measurements, and that will give you a better idea of which size will fit you best. Now let's take a look at the fabric we're going to need. You have your main and lining fabric, the interfacing. You need boning. You're also going to need one 9-inch separating zipper as well as a 20-inch separating zipper. All right, let's go look at the pattern pieces. All right, this is pattern piece number 1. This is the bodice front, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of lining. Next, you have pattern piece number 2. This is the bodice side front, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of lining. Next, you have pattern piece number 3. This is the bodice back, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of lining. Pattern piece number 4. This is the bodice side back, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of lining. This is pattern piece number 5. This is the front interfacing, and you're going to cut 2 of interfacing. This is pattern piece number 6. This is the back interfacing, and you're going to cut 1 on the fold of interfacing. All right, this is pattern piece number 7. This is the skirt front, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric. Okay, this is pattern piece number 8. This is the skirt side front, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric. Pattern piece number 9. This is the pocket, and you're going to cut 2. Pattern piece number 10, this is the pocket facing, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. This is pattern piece number 11. This is the skirt back, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric. All right, this is pattern piece number 12. This is the front facing, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. Pattern piece number 13, this is the upper back facing, and you're going to cut 1 on the fold of fabric and 1 on the fold of interfacing. This is pattern piece number 14. This is the lower front facing, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric and 2 of interfacing. And lastly, this is pattern piece number 15. This is the lower back facing, and you're going to cut 1 on the fold and 1 on the fold of interfacing. Okay, so go ahead and cut these out, and we're going to get started on our dress. First, you're going to stay stitch the front edges of bodice front between the notches. Once you have stay stitched the front bodice, you're going to take your bodice side front, and with right sides together, you're going to pin the bodice side front to the front, matching the notches. So you're going to baste it first and then stitch, and then you're going to press the seams towards the front. So make sure it's nice and pressed, and as you can see, the seams are facing the front. Okay, so now you're going to do the same for the back. You're going to take your bodice back, and you're going to pin it to the bodice side back. You're going to stitch the bodice side back to the bodice back, and then you're going to stitch the bodice back at the center. The center back seams should be open, and then you're going to flip it over on the top or on the front, and then you're going to top stitch. You're also going to top stitch the front pieces as well. Now you're going to get your boning, and I added a piece of fabric at the top so it doesn't pierce through my fabric. And I don't always do this, but I do this sometimes when my fabric is a little thinner. And I'm just going to pass it through. And there are different types of boning. This is the type that I like to use. This is one that you can actually sew on top of. And I love it because it can sometimes secure into your fabric a lot better when you get to sew on top of it instead of sliding it through. It's really just a matter of personal preference. And once I'm done passing it through, I want to make sure that there's just enough room for the seam allowance to be stitched. So I'm going to pin the shoulder seams together. I'm going to make sure that I leave the sides open. Okay, so now go ahead and stitch that together. And now to prepare to add my zipper, I'm going to fold in the front 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to press it. If you haven't already, mark where the seam allowance is at the bottom, and you are going to use this as a guide for where you're going to stitch your boning into the bodice. Cut off any extra pieces of boning, and you're going to make sure it's all the way in, and then you're going to stitch it closed. All right, so now to add the zipper, I'm going to make sure that it's closed, and I'm going to pin it face down under the pressed edges. And the zipper is a little bit long, and that's okay. I can trim that off later. Just make sure that your zipper is within the dots on the front edge. Baste stitch the zipper down, and when you're done that, you're going to do the other side. If you don't have a zipper foot, you can always use your standard presser foot, and that seemed to work well for me. You just got to make sure that your needle is closer to the zipper teeth without going over the zipper teeth. Make sure it's done to both sides, and let's put that away for now. So now you're going to take your lining pieces, and I actually decided to use the exact same fabric for my lining, which is fine. So you're going to pin the front interfacing to the wrong side of the front lining sections, having the raw edges even, and you're going to fuse in place with your iron. You're going to do the same with your back pieces, and you're going to fuse the back interfacing to the neck edge of the back lining in the same manner as the front. So the only thing that you're really doing differently is that you're not adding boning to the lining pieces. Now you can stitch the front to back lining sections at the shoulder seams. Okay, so now go ahead and stitch that together. Press under 5/8 of an inch on the front edges of the lining as well. Once you've done that with right sides together, you're going to pin the lining to the bodice, making sure you match all the notches. There's a lot of different things that you got to make sure that you're stitching, because there's some parts that are also going to leave open. So make sure you also pay attention to that. And yes, this is a lot of pinning, but you want to make sure that you do pin it together because you want it to be matched perfectly. All right, so once you're done pinning, you're going to stitch the neck edges, the bottom, and the armhole edges. And when I start sewing those together, I actually start at the center just to make sure that my notches do not get misaligned as I go from one end to the other. Turn the bodice right sides out through the side openings. And then you're going to understitch the bodice lining as far as possible. And I'm going to take you to my sewing machine to do that. So when you're understitching, you want to make sure that your seam is facing towards your lining, and you're going to stitch on top of the lining. All right, so the next step, I actually kind of did it my own way, but it's very similar. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the sides where the zipper is and then the side seams, and you're going to basically pass it through right sides facing. So take a close look, because it can be complicated, but it looks beautiful when you're done. So you're going to pass it through, and you're just going to stitch all the way across, making sure that you match your seams. So go ahead and stitch both sides together. So you can see it a little bit here, but that bottom part, those bottom areas on the bodice is left to attach the skirt. Speaking of skirt, let's put that aside and let's get to the skirt. With right sides together, you're going to stitch the skirt side front to the skirt front sections, matching the notches. And then you're going to press under 5/8 of an inch on the front edges of the skirt, just like you did for the bodice. So you're going to put that aside for now, and you're going to take out your pockets. And you want to make sure that you first apply interfacing to the pocket facing, and with right sides together, you're going to stitch the facing to the pocket sections, matching the notches and the small dots. And with the curves, you can clip the curves and trim the seam. So once you stitch the pocket facing to the pocket, you're going to also understitch. So you're going to go ahead and stitch those together. Here I've already pressed under 3/4 of an inch seam allowance on the lower and front edges of the pocket, and I basted the facing in place. So now I'm going to top stitch the pocket in place about 1/2 inch from the pressed edge, and I'm going to baste the raw edges together. So now I'm going to take my pocket, and on the outside I'm going to pin the pocket to the front, matching the small dots. I'm going to put the skirt front aside. I'm going to go ahead and do the back. Now I'm going to take my skirt back sections and I'm going to pin it at the center back, and I'm also going to make my darts. So I'm going to pin my darts and I'm going to take that to the sewing machine. So I went ahead and stitched those together, and notice that I pressed my darts towards the center back, and I also stay stitched the top. So when doing my darts, I always start at the raw edge of the dart, which is the larger side, and I'm going to stitch all the way down. Once I get about 1 inch away from the point, I curve in so that my stitches are right at the edge of the fold. Look at that beautiful dart. With right sides together, I'm going to now pin my skirt front to the back at the sides, and I'm going to stitch that together. So now it's time to attach my zipper, and I'm going to attach the zipper in the same way that I did my bodice front. I'm going to make sure the zipper is face down and closed under the front pressed edges. And I want to make sure that it is still between those dots where the zipper is supposed to go. I'm going to baste it. I'm going to do the same for my other side. I'm going to check my zipper and make sure that it goes up, and it does. Yay! This is starting to look so good. I'm so excited. All right, so now we're going to take the bodice front and we are going to attach it to the skirt. On the outside, you're going to pin the bodice to the upper edge of the skirt at the side edges. Make sure that you are matching the large dots, and now you're going to baste it together. All right, I've already applied my interfacing to the wrong side of the front facing and back facing. And with right sides together, I'm going to stitch the side seams of the front and back facing together. I've also already edge stitched the facing. So as you can see, I used a serger and that is clean and finished. I like using sergers opposed to folding because I think sometimes it's a lot easier. So I'm going to stitch that together, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab my dress, and now I'm going to apply my facings to the dress. With right sides together, I'm going to pin the facing to the garment over the bodice, and I'm going to clip to stay stitching if necessary. So stitch the upper edge, and baste the lower edges of the facing. I've already interfaced my lower front facing and my lower back facing. And with right sides together, I'm going to stitch the side seams of the facing sections. You also want to finish the unnotched edges of your facings. I serged it because that's just a lot easier for me. So now that that's done, on the outside, I'm going to pin the lower facing to the garment, matching the notches and the large dots. So once I was done pinning, I went ahead and stitched that together. Once that's stitched together, I understitched the upper and the lower facings as far as possible. You can see that right here. I also did a quick stitch on top of the facing just to hold that facing in place. To secure the zipper to the facing, I went ahead and top stitched the front 1/4 inch away from the pressed edge using my normal presser foot, but you could feel free to use an adjustable zipper foot. And instead of slip stitching the edges of the facing together, I ended up using my liquid stitch because it was just a lot easier for me at the time. And close to the finished edge of the lower facing, I stitched the lower facing in place. And the dress is done. I'm going to go ahead and zip the front bodice up so you can see. And it looks beautiful. I love it. I love the fabric. I love the dress. It is amazing. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to tag me in your makes for my pattern ME2014.